April 26, 1986, in the morning hours. The nuclear power plant in Chernobyl, Ukraine, was to witness the worst nuclear disaster in world history. That day, engineers were conducting a safety test in Reactor 4. However, the plan for the test was incomplete and flawed. A series of missteps and failure to follow safety protocols made disaster inevitable. At that moment, the pressure in the reactor rose and the temperature spiraled out of control. The explosion completely destroyed the upper part of the plant. At the time of the explosion, plant workers and the surrounding community were slow to realize the seriousness of the incident. At first, firefighters and engineers fought valiantly to extinguish the fire and bring the situation under control. However, as radioactive materials began to spread into the air, the extent of the danger became clear. Smoke could be seen for miles around. More than 30 people lost their lives immediately after the incident. But more frightening were the long-term effects of the disaster. The government was late to prepare an emergency evacuation plan. At first, not enough measures were taken to get local people out of their homes. As a result, thousands of people were unable to escape the effects of the explosion. Radioactive clouds spread across many parts of Europe. Chernobyl was more than just an accident. It shook confidence in nuclear power around the world and led many countries to question their energy policies. In the aftermath of the disaster, evacuation and rescue efforts in the region faced great difficulties. People were forced to flee their homes. Many never returned. The towns around Chernobyl remained empty for years and became dead cities. In the long term, the number of cancers and other diseases increased dramatically. The effects of the disaster were felt for generations. Chernobyl is remembered as a tragic example of humanity's struggle with nature. It forced a rethinking of nuclear safety standards and a change in energy policies. Chernobyl is not just a disaster. It is also a story of humanity confronting the dangers of its own making. This tragedy, which reveals the power of nature and the consequences of human error, continues to teach lessons to future generations. Chernobyl will live on as a warning in the depths of history. September 11th, 2001, morning hours. The World Trade Center in New York was a symbol of America's economic power. It seemed like an ordinary day. People were going to work, going about their daily lives. However, this ordinary day would turn into a tragedy that will be remembered throughout history. At 8:46 a.m., the world changed as the first plane, American Airlines 11, crashed into the North Tower. The sound of the explosion shook the city, and people struggled to understand what had happened. Just 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., the second plane, United Airlines 175, hit the South Tower. At that moment, the same question was on everyone's mind. Was this an accident or an attack? As people panicked and looked for ways to escape, those inside the towers faced a terrible uncertainty. Realizing that the planes had been hijacked, the authorities were trying to put contingency plans in place, but time was running out. At 9:37 a.m., the third plane that crashed into the Pentagon was a direct attack on America's military might. The fourth plane, United Airlines 93, failed to reach its target thanks to the brave resistance of the passengers and crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. However, nearly 3,000 people lost their lives during these events. After the attack, a wave of shock and mourning swept the world. National security concerns were heightened as people tried to cope with the pain of losing loved ones. Following the attack, the United States decided to declare war on terrorism. Security measures were tightened in the country, with more controls at airports and public places. 9/11 was not only a terrorist attack, but also a turning point that would reshape international relations and security policies worldwide. It became a symbol of humanity's struggle against terrorism. The effects of 9/11 were not limited to the United States. Many countries around the world revised their security strategies and took new measures. The tragedy also reinforced the spirit of solidarity and unity in society. People came together to honor the memory of the lives lost. 11 is remembered as one of the most unforgettable moments in history. It continues to live on as a story full of sadness and solidarity, where humanity faced a dark side, 9/11 has become an event that is commemorated every year, a pain that is remembered and at the same time a symbol of humanity's resistance. March 11th, 2011. Japan was startled by the terrible tremor of an earthquake measuring 9.0 on the Richter scale. It was one of the most powerful earthquakes in history, and in just a few minutes, it devastated the Tohoku region in the northeast of the country. But the tsunami that followed the earthquake would turn out to be a real disaster. The giant waves raced along the coast, crashing into the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant and disabling its safety systems. Explosions began to sound from inside the plant. At first, plant workers tried to take control of the situation, but panic and uncertainty spread quickly as systems collapsed. The cooling systems in the reactors failed. The first explosion occurred on March 12th, and the population was quickly evacuated. However, the evacuation process was inadequate, and many people were slow to realize the extent of the danger. The radioactive leaks that followed the tsunami affected not only Japan, but the world. The government was late in preparing an emergency evacuation plan, which created a great deal of mistrust among the population. In the long term, the effects of Fukushima have led to serious problems with radioactive contamination and human health. In the aftermath of the disaster, thousands of people were forced to flee their homes, deeply shaking the social fabric of the region. Fukushima has shaken confidence in nuclear power, causing many countries to review their energy policies. In Europe, many countries have moved to shut down nuclear power plants or improve safety standards. This disaster was not just an accident. It was also a story of the power of nature and the severe consequences of humanity's unpreparedness. In the aftermath of Fukushima, reconstruction in the region has been a long and arduous journey. As people tried to rebuild their lost homes and lives, they were frustrated by the government's inadequate response. The tragedy also brought out the community's spirit of solidarity, as people supported each other to overcome these difficult times. Fukushima lives on as a warning in the depths of history. It is a story of humanity confronting the dangers of its own making. The debate on nuclear energy has deepened in the wake of Fukushima, and this tragedy will continue to teach important lessons to future generations. Fukushima will be remembered as a tragic story of the combination of the power of nature and human error. December 26, 2004. The Aceh region of Indonesia was rocked in the morning by an earthquake measuring 9.1 on the Richter scale. It was one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in history, and in just a few minutes, it foreshadowed a catastrophe that would radically change life in the region. Following the earthquake, a massive shift in the ocean floor caused a giant tsunami to form. The wave rushed towards the shore, and no one could have predicted the scale of the devastation they would face. As the tsunami raced towards the coastal towns and villages, people sought escape in fear. But for many, it was not enough as the waves reached up to 30 meters in height. In that moment, people who had been going about their lives were suddenly helpless before the terrible force of nature. Buildings, roads, and living spaces were destroyed by the power of the giant waves. In just a few minutes, the tsunami took the lives of more than 230,000 people and left millions homeless. In the aftermath, a wave of shock and grief spread around the world. Many countries mobilized to send aid, but relief efforts were initially inadequate as infrastructure in the region was largely destroyed. Emergency teams struggled to reach the region after the disaster, while survivors struggled to meet their basic needs. Water, food, healthcare, and shelter became the most urgent needs. The tsunami was not only physically devastating, but also had a profound impact on the social fabric. Families were torn apart, communities destroyed, but the disaster also reinforced the spirit of solidarity and solidarity across the world. Many countries sent aid with great solidarity and started working to rebuild the region. This process also led to significant changes in international relations, as countries began to cooperate to better prepare for natural disasters. The Indonesian tsunami has gone down in history as a tragic example of the power of nature and human vulnerability in the face of this power. This event once again demonstrated the importance of disaster management and preparedness. The tsunami also brought a story of solidarity and rebirth. Many people came together to remember those they had lost and to look to the future with hope. This disaster will continue to be remembered as a story of human frailty and resilience in the face of nature. Indonesia will live on as a lesson in the depths of history and will continue to make us question humanity's relationship with nature. The tsunami is not only a disaster, but also a memory of human strength and solidarity. January 12, 2010. Haiti was shaken by an earthquake measuring 7.0 on the Richter scale. The capital, Port-au-Prince, was at the epicenter of this natural disaster, and the city was devastated in a very short time. At that moment, as people went about their daily lives, their lives were turned upside down by the terrible tremors coming from underground. Buildings, roads, and bridges collapsed in an instant. Life came to an abrupt halt. At the moment of the earthquake, people panicked and looked for ways to escape. However, many were trapped under their homes or workplaces. As the hours passed, it became difficult for relief teams to reach them. Local emergency teams attempted to respond first, but Haiti's weak infrastructure and inadequate resources rendered these efforts ineffective. In the aftermath of the earthquake, calls for help went beyond the borders of the country, with many countries around the world mobilizing to send emergency aid. The earthquake in Haiti killed around 230,000 people. In addition, more than 300,000 people were injured and millions were left homeless. People struggled to survive in temporary shelters and faced hygiene and health problems. The earthquake was not only a physical devastation, it also deeply shook the social fabric of society. Families were torn apart, and people struggled to cope with the pain of lost loved ones. Aid from around the world was initially inadequate, and time was lost in some areas due to lack of coordination. However, as the days passed, emergency relief teams did their best to improve the situation in Haiti. Many countries sent aid for healthcare, food, and water supply. This process both reinforced the spirit of solidarity and demonstrated the solidarity of humanity in times of disaster. The Haiti earthquake was not only a natural disaster, but also a reflection of poverty, inadequate infrastructure and governance problems. This event led to a review of disaster management and relief processes around the world. After years of devastation, Haiti has begun the process of rebuilding, but it has been fraught with challenges. Haiti's story is one of solidarity, hope, and rebirth. In the years after the earthquake, people came together to remember those they had lost and to look to the future with hope. As Haiti struggled to get back on its feet after this tragedy, it also demonstrated the resilience of humanity. While this disaster reminded us how vulnerable human beings are in the face of the power of nature, it also showed the importance of solidarity. Haiti will continue to be remembered in the depths of history as a story of warning and rebirth. May 6, 1937. The Hindenburg LZ-129, the largest and most luxurious airship at the time, began its descent to land at Kennedy Airport on its way from Germany to the United States. This enormous aircraft was filled with hydrogen and represented the most advanced technology at the time. The Hindenburg revolutionized air transportation, offering its passengers comfort and elegance. However, this magnificent journey would turn into a tragedy that will be remembered throughout history. As the Hindenburg approached Lakehurst Naval Air Station in New Jersey, it suddenly burst into flames. The sound of the explosion echoed through the sky. Flames spread rapidly beneath the airship as most people stood in horror, not realizing what had happened. Passengers and crew tried to escape in panic, but the fire quickly grew and engulfed the entire ship. This tragic event took place in just a few minutes, and the Hindenburg became a ball of fire in midair. The fire, along with the destruction of the airship, killed 36 people. The survivors tried to escape with injuries, but the tragedy shook the world to its core. The fall of the Hindenburg was widely covered in the press and broadcast live on television. It happened in front of millions of people, shaking confidence in air transportation and calling into question the use of hydrogen-powered airships. In the aftermath of the disaster, it was investigated why the Hindenburg burned so quickly. The fire was found to be directly linked to the nature of the hydrogen gas and the flammable coating of the airship. The Hindenburg disaster marked the history of air transportation and sparked a debate on the dangers of hydrogen gas. It also forced a reassessment of the safety of air transportation. Airships quickly became obsolete due to safety concerns. The story of the Hindenburg was not just an aircraft accident, but a combination of human overconfidence in technology and the dangers of nature. This tragedy reminds people of the importance of a careful approach to science and technology. The Hindenburg lives on as a lesson from the depths of history and symbolizes humanity's struggle with nature. The Hindenburg disaster has become something of a legend, demonstrating once again the need for humanity to learn from its mistakes and the importance of knowing the limits of technology. This tragedy will be remembered as an unforgettable memory and will lead the way in raising safety standards. August 29, 2005. On the southern coast of the United States, as Hurricane Katrina was fast approaching, the residents of New Orleans were going about their daily lives. However, the warnings of meteorologists were ignored. Katrina was one of the most powerful hurricanes in recorded history, packing winds of up to 280 kilometers per hour. The city was vulnerable to rising water and the hurricane's devastating impact. When the hurricane hit New Orleans in the morning, chaos and panic ensued. Water levels began to rise rapidly. Many people were forced to flee their homes. However, the evacuation process was not fast and efficient enough. Infrastructure deficiencies left people stranded in some areas. After the hurricane, security systems in the city collapsed and communication lines were down. People experienced moments of fear as they searched for a way out. Katrina's most devastating impact came when the city's dam system collapsed. The bursting of the dams caused water to suddenly flood the city. Hundreds of thousands of people were forced to seek refuge in emergency shelters, but these were filled with inadequate food, water, and hygiene. Those who survived were in desperate straits. After the hurricane, many parts of New Orleans were completely destroyed. Katrina was not only a natural disaster, but also a reflection of shortcomings in crisis management. The government's response was disappointing for many. The inadequacy of emergency services led to a great deal of anger and frustration in society. It also exposed inequalities in America's social fabric, with poor and minority groups in particular disproportionately affected by the tragedy. Hurricane Katrina highlighted the importance of preparedness and resilience to natural disasters around the world. It prompted many countries to review their disaster management and emergency plans. In the aftermath of the hurricane, the people of New Orleans embarked on a rebuilding process. The community came together in a spirit of solidarity to remember those they had lost and to look to the future with hope. Katrina's story is about loss, solidarity, and rebirth. While this disaster reveals the power of nature and the challenges faced by humanity, it also reminds us of the importance of hope and the will to rebuild. Katrina lives on as a lesson in the depths of history and will be remembered as a story of human frailty and resilience in the face of nature. August 24th, 79. Pompeii, one of the favorite cities of the Roman Empire, was living its daily life in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. The city was known for its lively streets, magnificent villas, and bustling commercial life. However, this ordinary day would turn into one of the greatest natural disasters in history. In the morning, Mount Vesuvius suddenly erupted. At first, the sky darkened, and people were on the brink of a terrible catastrophe before they realized what was happening. The eruption first created a cloud of smoke that covered the city. Then, hot gases and volcanic ash suddenly began to overwhelm the city. Life in the city came to an abrupt halt as people panicked and searched for escape routes. In just a few hours, the fury of Vesuvius began to engulf Pompeii. The city was quickly destroyed by hot gases and volcanic ash. For thousands of years after the event, the city was forgotten and underground. The destruction of Pompeii was not only a physical catastrophe, but also a loss of people's lives and culture. People had to leave behind their homes, their loved ones, and their daily lives. Many people lost their lives inside their homes as a result of the natural disaster. This event was recorded as one of the most tragic moments in history. Excavations in the 18th century showed that Pompeii was not just a city, but a window into the way of life of ancient Rome. As archaeologists uncovered ruins buried under volcanic ash, the city's rich cultural heritage began to come to light. Houses, temples, theaters, and mosaics revealed the life of the time. Pompeii became a unique resource for understanding the daily life of ancient Rome. The story of Pompeii is a tragic example of the power of nature and the unpreparedness of humanity. This event warns humanity that they should never underestimate the power of nature. Over time, Pompeii became not just a city, but a legend symbolizing the ambitions and foibles of humanity. Today, Pompeii remains an important destination for tourists and history buffs. The destruction of Pompeii lives on as a warning in the depths of human history. This tragedy reminds us of the power of nature and how fragile humans are. Pompeii is a lesson from the depths of history. It tells about humanity's helplessness in the face of nature and how precious life is. Launched in 1912, the Titanic was an engineering marvel of its time. Designed as a symbol of luxury living, this gigantic ship set sail on its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York with 2,224 passengers and crew. The Titanic was not only the dream of the rich, but also the dream of the poor. It accommodated a wide range of social classes. The ship stood out with its extraordinary comfort and modern amenities and became a symbol of hope for everyone. However, this hopeful journey would come to a terrible end around 2340 on the night of April 14th. The Titanic struck an iceberg in the depths of the ocean. The impact caused huge cracks in the side of the ship. By the time the crew realized the seriousness of the situation, the ship was already taking on water. Panic and chaos spread quickly among the passengers. But the real problem was the lack of lifeboats. The Titanic had only 20 lifeboats, certainly not enough for everyone on board. One of the most memorable moments of the disaster was when the ship's orchestra kept playing. The notes of the orchestra were trying to give peace even during the sinking of the ship. As people witnessed the chaos around them, they tried to help each other. But for many, it was not enough. The Titanic sank to the bottom in just 2 hours and 40 minutes. By morning, more than 700 survivors had been rescued by the ship Carpathia. However, more than 1,500 people became victims of this tragedy. The story of the Titanic was not just a shipwreck, but a combination of human error, overconfidence in technology, and tragedy. It changed maritime history, reshaped safety standards, and once again demonstrated humanity's impotence in the face of nature. Over time, the Titanic became not just a ship, but a legend, symbolizing the ambitions and foibles of humanity. The tragedy led to radical changes in the safety of sea voyages and reminded people that they should never underestimate the power of nature. The Titanic lives on as a lesson in the depths of history. January 28, 1986. The Challenger Space Shuttle, one of the most promising projects in the United States space program, was prepared for launch from the Kennedy Space Center. On that day, the shuttle would embark on a historic journey that would last 73 seconds. Inside, 7 brave astronauts, along with scientist and teacher Krista McAuliffe, were eagerly waiting to go into space. However, this journey would end in an unexpected tragedy. On the day of the launch, there were concerns about cold weather conditions. The shuttle faced low temperatures and the risk of freezing. NASA engineers warned many times before the launch, but project managers ignored these concerns. At 11:38 a.m., Challenger was launched, and a large crowd of onlookers cheered the historic moment. But just 73 seconds after the shuttle lifted off, an explosion sounded, and the Challenger disappeared into the sky. The explosion took place in front of the eyes of millions of people. This event, which was broadcast live on television, shook not only America, but the whole world. 7 astronauts on board became victims of this tragedy. Immediately after the incident, a great sense of grief and loss spread throughout society. Challenger was a reminder once again that space exploration carries not only excitement, but also risks. Following the disaster, NASA launched an investigation to look into the causes of the incident. The results revealed responsibility for going ahead with the launch, despite warnings from engineers. The incident led to a review of safety standards in the space program and stricter measures. The Challenger disaster marked a turning point in space exploration and shook many people's confidence in space. The tragedy was also remembered as a loss in education and science. Krista McAuliffe, a teacher, was chosen to run an education program in space. Her dream was to inspire many young people, but that dream ended tragically. Challenger was not just a shuttle, but a symbol of humanity's passion and courage for space. The Challenger disaster highlighted the risks of space exploration and humanity's struggle with nature. It continues to be commemorated every year, reminding people of their dreams for space and the responsibilities that come with those dreams. Challenger will live on as a lesson in the depths of history and will continue to symbolize the courage of humanity.